Well, we're joined now in studio by Micheál Martin, the leader of Fianna Fáil and Taoiseach. Thanks for coming in to speak to us this evening. I think there's a lot of people who really want to hear from you this evening. Parliamentary party members from Fianna Fáil have been out today describing the selection of Jim Gavin as a presidential candidate as a miscalculation, a fiasco, and say now is a critical moment for the party. You messed up in picking Jim Gavin, didn't you?
Well, I think, first of all, I think the parliamentary party, on my strong recommendation, and the majority of the party, selected Jim Gavin in a democratic election. Why? Because I think my strategy was, I think we needed a broad-based candidate who could have the potential to garner a significant degree of support across society. And his background was significant, and he had made a very significant contribution to Irish society.
It was very much, as you just said there, you picked this guy.
No, I didn't. No, I think we need to be careful about all of that, because we have a parliamentary party of democratically elected representatives in their respective constituencies. There was actually early on a very strong positive reaction to Jim Gavin's selection. If you look at the early, even though I'm not a big fan of polling, the early polling and so on was positive. I got lots of positive feedback about Jim Gavin from sporting world, from the military world, and indeed from his work as the chair of the Citizens' Assembly, and particularly in the northeast inner city, there was very positive.
Well, you made it
feedback.
Clear that this was the person you wanted to see as the Fianna Fáil
issue
candidate.
was Fianna Fáil wanted a candidate, right, the parliamentary party, but May, June, July, no one came forward to me within the parliamentary party and said, I want to be the candidate.
Well, so, there are some people who say they sent you text messages and you never replied to them. Bertie Ahern, for one, said he sent messages.
No one, just listen to what I said. No one in the parliamentary party came forward and said, I want to be a candidate in May, in June or July. Now, in July, the others did come forward, and Bertie Ahern indicated, not to me, but to, I think, to Sean Dorgan, maybe Secretary General, and there was conversations.
And Mary Hanafin
did. But,
Bob Geldof.
Later, lots of names came in August through different sources and so on like that. And that's one of the difficulties with this presidential election. I mean, there could be 10 or 15 names were mooted by different people or in the media, but I can't keep commenting on every individual name throughout August.
He was democratically selected, as you say, by the parliamentary party, but you had given your firm backing to him.
Absolutely, I take responsibility for that.
So you take responsibility.
I take responsibility for that, and I want to acknowledge that many members of the party are hurting out there today because of what has transpired. And I fully accept that. And, you know, we've been through tough times in the past. I've been through tough times as leader of the party. This is a tough day for us as a party. It's not something I anticipated or wanted in any shape or form.
You mentioned all of the positive characteristics that Jim Gavin has, and he might be a brilliant football manager. But you pushed somebody who had no political experience, had no links to the party, and now it seems you didn't do due diligence on him. Why not?
Well, we did do due diligence. That's a very comprehensive due diligence was done. And secondly, I've always questioned, I mean, in the past we've had presidents who were not members of political parties, or who were not members of Dáil Éireann, or who were not ministers. I think we need to be careful that the wisdom of the herd doesn't come in and say you can never be a president if you're not a member of a parliamentary party, or if you have never been a minister.
Which is fair enough.
I think constitutionally that was never meant to be the case.
Because that's the issue. That's the issue here. Did you know that Jim Gavin had been a landlord and that he owed €3,300 to a former tenant?
We didn't know about that specific issue.
OK, so you didn't do that due diligence? Did you ask him?
Yes.
About being a landlord?
So we knew he was a landlord. He volunteered. Like, what happens in a situation like this, you say to any candidate, is there anything in your life that we need to know? Is there anything that happened in the past? And that happened with Jim Gavin over a number of hours. And then subsequently, queries were made, and there's queries made about lots of things in the midst of an election. Just want to go to the specifics here. And repeatedly, Jim was asked, had you ever any issue with a tenant? And he said, absolutely not.
This only happened last week, though.
Even prior to that, there would have been, you know, that was put to him as part of, because when it was emerged that he had been, he rented out an apartment at one time in his life, then it was asked subsequently, was there any issues with a tenant? And the answer was no. I mean, there's only so much, you know, anyone can do in situations like this. We're not, you know...
So he didn't tell you the truth?
Well, I don't know. I think what happened here, there was an issue happened in his life back in and around 2009. He clearly did not deal with it at that time or since, and probably buried it somewhere in the recesses of his mind and didn't deal with it. And the consequences of that have now come home.
Does Fianna Fáil, though, not bear any responsibility? Because a newspaper managed to find this out. How could a party who's running a presidential candidate, someone to run for the highest office in the land, not find that out?
Well, I think there's only... If people... And look, there was other spurious, invented stories about Jim Gavin as well, which were completely false. So we get lots of queries in respect of different candidates at different times. We do everything we humanly possibly can to get to the bottom of those, but ultimately you have to depend on, when you put the question to an individual or to a candidate.
You ultimately found out last Saturday, isn't that right, when the tenant came to Fianna Fáil?
Contacted our press officer or press office, and it was, and I understand why, annoyed with the article on Saturday. And then the tenant said, I've made numerous attempts to contact Jim Gavin back in 2009, and that was Saturday evening. And that then was a significant change in what we knew, because we weren't aware of the tenant, didn't know the tenant. And so...
So how did you feel about Jim Gavin's candidacy at that stage when you found that out?
Well, I felt that I had functions all day in Cork on Saturday.
Did you know?
I got feedback on late Saturday evening that this conversation had happened. So I think then I said to the party, look, you need to talk to Jim about this. He came in, he discussed it, he went back home, and then he wanted to find out more material, more information. And then I travelled up to Dublin yesterday, and then yesterday afternoon I got the latest readout on it, and we discussed it.
You said today that he made the right decision. On Saturday, when you found out about this, why did you and Fianna Fáil headquarters then let him go and take part in a presidential debate the day after?
First of all, it's not about letting... we don't physically...
Would you not say this isn't a good idea?
No, we don't physically stop people from going on and doing an interview. But secondly, I would make the point, to come off a ticket like this is a momentous decision, huge decision. You're not going to force that, or someone can come to that decision in an hour or two. So I came up Sunday afternoon. He was preparing for the interview on Sunday morning. I don't think it might not have been in his contemplation. It may have been prior to the programme. But it's a momentous decision, and it's a very tough decision. And it's a very tough decision for Jim Gavin. And I feel for him at one level, because he did make a very significant contribution to society in many aspects. I mean, there's some of the testimonies we got from people, you talk about due diligence, what people said about Jim Gavin in terms of his charitable work, in terms of his work with young people. No, this is important, because there's another side to it. And in terms of his mentoring of young people, and his work in the military and so on. It was all positive.
Are you saying that Jim Gavin made this decision himself, or did you make the decision for him?
I think Jim made the decision himself, but we did discuss it with him, because obviously his whole DNA is competitive, and this was a very painful and very difficult decision for him to take.
It's now turned into something painful and difficult for you, because you have to meet your parliamentary party on Wednesday, and there is calls for you to apologise to them, first of all, which I think you did earlier in this interview. But, one Fianna Fáil councillor from Loughrea said today, you operate like a dictator and the leadership is very top-down. What do you say to that? Will you change that way of operating?
Well, I would resent that term. I'm a Democrat. I'm a passionate Democrat. Anybody who knows me knows that I believe passionately in parliamentary
democracy. Do you listen
to
the grassroots, though?
Absolutely. I've travelled the length and breadth of the country. I helped to rebuild the grassroots of the party when we were at a very low ebb. I travelled the length and breadth of the country. I love the grassroots. I speak to people. I go in behind to, the meetings and talk to people after meetings to try and identify who's the coming candidate in the area. And I worked to build up in local elections in 2014. We've won the last 3 local elections.
Will you be the person leading your party into the next election?
I got a very strong mandate in the last general election, and my focus is on governing the country and fulfilling that mandate, and that's my intention. But again, I do engage with people, and I've no issue, and I'll consult with the parliamentary party fully in reviewing all of this. I'm very open, and the review has to be comprehensive, involving everybody. Because
but you want to lead the party into the next election?
That's my intention is to do that, and also to focus on. We've a budget tomorrow. We've a very serious international situation, as we can see from this news again this evening. And my job as Taoiseach is to navigate the country through turbulent times right now internationally, and also to maintain and sustain the very strong, resilient economy that we have. And then can we look after people with disabilities, people with
and we will
child
have
poverty,
the budget tomorrow,
and make sure that we can invest in the future. I know you will be
talking about what happens in the budget. In a word, do you know how much this cost Fianna Fáil?
Not yet, but we'll find out, obviously.
Taoiseach and Fianna Fáil leader Micheál Martin, thank you for coming in to speak to us on 6
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks.